So hello everyone, welcome to SPARC's newest initiative, the 2022 budget analysis, where we'll be doing an in-depth analysis of this year's annual budget.
We have with us today Mrs. Sanchita Mukherji, a ex-vice president with HSBC Private Banking. She co-founded and is a partner at Blue Edge Multifamily Office.
Hello.
Hello ma'am, thank you for joining us today. We are very glad to have you here with us.
I'm very
Okay ma'am,
honored
so let's
for the
start
privilege.
with Okay, ma'am, let's start with your views on the budget of 2022. What did you like and dislike about the budget this year?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on your show. As always, very excited to talk to students. I'll give you a very simplistic view of the budget without getting into too many technicalities to begin with. It is a very pro-growth budget. So what I really like about the budget, that there is a lot of emphasis on infrastructure, on capital expenditure, on bolstering infrastructure, and the quality of fiscal spending really shows in this budget, which is very required in a country like ours, because the multiplier effect of quality spending, productive spending always has an implication on the overall growth, on employment generation, and managing the finances of the government well, which is a key aspect of the economy today. So I think being fiscally well within your rights and having a very heavy allocation to capital expenditure, doing a great overhauling of the infrastructure, and trying to crowd in private investment by showing the road ahead is something which I liked in the budget, of course. What I dislike, I won't say dislike is a strong word, but what I feel is a bit lacking is that the government has more or less been able to address a lot of supply side issues and a lot of emphasis and focus on medium to long-term growth. And all of that is there definitely for sure. But I think it could have focused a bit on the consumption side. In the budget, the three things that we actually look out for would be income generation, which is investment and expenditure, and the quality of expenditure, and of course, consumption, which is another very key aspect to today's economy. So I think the focus on consumption was definitely lacking. Other than that, it was a very pro-growth budget with a lot of emphasis in infra, in data integration, data management, new age technology, doing things more efficiently, reducing a lot of compliance, overlapping compliance, ease of business, focusing on a lot of smaller and newer sectors, which usually do not come up. Like, for example, typically when we have the budget, there'll be a lot of sectors, pharma, real estate, consumption, discretionary, everybody will be waiting sector-wise for the announcement. But what was unique in this budget was they talked about sectors which were unheard of in the past, which I think is a bit progressive in terms of there was mention of gaming, there was emphasis, 11% higher emphasis on education. This should be interesting to all of you, getting universities from abroad to come into the gift city, emphasis on education at a schooling level because of the pandemic. 2 years have been lost, and it's important that one looks at the lowest common denominator in an economy like ours, where the disparity is so huge. So apart from spending and focusing on overall growth, there were a lot of sectors which had come up in terms of R&D in defense, combining with the private sector, giving a lot of fiscal space to states to come up with their own schemes which are focusing on employment generation and capital expenditure, infrastructure, things like that. I think were pretty progressive.
Yes, ma'am. So moving on to the next question. Can you give us some insights on how the investment will be financed by the government this financial year, since total expenditure has increased by about 1,70,000 crore since last year, the bulk of its account for capital expenditure?
Yeah, it is absolutely the need of the hour, and this is something that they could not have done without So I'm in a way pretty glad that they're going about with this expenditure. The way to finance it would be, yes, surely there would be borrowings, and borrowings have increased significantly. There's a 15 lakh crore borrowing announcement that has happened, which put the bond markets into a tailspin. That was the fallout which has happened. I mean, equity is a no-brainer. A lot of people uh, realize that the budget is a non-event in the equity space, and the markets are usually very forward and optimistic looking when it's a pro-growth economy. But yeah, in the bond markets, the huge announcement in the borrowing number made the bond prices very, very volatile. So yes, that is a question I think that can be better answered in the finance bill, because the devil lies in the detail. However, I think the government would definitely look at, I mean, if they announced that the LIC IPO would be done this fiscal itself. So let's see how that happens. And tax collections are very buoyant. GST collection has hit an all-time high. So I would assume that what the government is assuming at this point in time would be that if you spend with both hands on the capital expenditure in a very productive manner, as in the quality of the spending, if it increases dramatically, what will happen is that the nominal GDP growth itself would be able to take care of your borrowing and the interest burden. So that is something I do believe that the government is counting on. Apart from that, disinvestment targets are important. I do hope that they execute that well.
Okay, so ma'am, the finance minister mentioned in a post-budget press conference, she said, and I quote, that we are not taxing currencies, as crypto is not a currency. They cannot be, as currency can only be issued by the central bank. Everything else are assets created by individuals, and we are taxing profits made out of transactions out of those assets, and that is 30%. That's what she said. So, what do you think will its implication be in the future of cryptocurrency in India?
Well, I think it hints at a kind of an acceptance, which is good. In the sense, well, there is a significant, sizable volume which has gone into the crypto markets, right? So without naming it as a currency, without legitimizing it per se, there is an overall hint of acceptance of the space by taxing it. So, which I think is a clever move because well, there is, like I said, there's a significant volume of transactions which is happening there, and a lot of buying and selling and making money which is happening over there. So the government would like to tax it and earn their own revenue out of it, which is pretty much standard across different countries of the world. I mean, if you were to see the transaction costs of cryptos in, say, US or Japan, it's pretty high, and as well as capital gain tax. Right now, in fact, if you were to look at the legislation in US, again, it's not very clear. The IRS views it differently from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve would view it differently from the SEC in terms of whether it's an asset or whether it's a currency, whether it's a commodity, all of that. So the definitions there are also very, very unclear. Here, it's pretty much straightforward that we are looking at it as an asset. We are definitely not accepting it as a currency or a mode of exchange. It is not backed by anything other than an asset class which generates a capital gain which needs to be taxed.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, since the capital expenditure has been the main focus of the budget, stocks of industries like infrastructure and banking saw a positive response. While some
Yes.
experts view that this budget was a non-event to the stock market, what do you think about how the stock market saw the budget of 2022?
Well, the stock market was the first day was pretty elated, and I think now today the second day it's business as usual, and the market gyrations have taken over the natural course. So yeah, the equity markets viewed it overall in a positive manner, because an expenditure which is thoughtful, which is meaningful, which is being spent not on wasteful expenditure. Say one is very tempted, it's an election year, so it's very easy for a government to go all out and resort to a populist budget, right? In terms of there are enough and more, you can give very wasteful subsidies, dole outs, freebies. So I think it has refrained from all of that. It has been fiscally a bit prudent and managed well within its space, because let's understand debt to GDP, we are one of the highest, 90%. It's quite high. So we cannot afford to be lax on that front, because end of the day, everybody pays out of their own pocket as much as we don't realize, but we do. So productive and meaningful spending is definitely pro growth. Spending on infrastructure from medium to long term actually creates a lot of employment opportunities as well. I mean, that's how major economies have actually progressed, by spending with both hands on infrastructure, on the infrastructure front, because that does generate employment, job creation in the long haul. So yes, equity markets have taken it positively. There was a mention, I think, of cross-border IBC code also being valid in transactions being taken care of. There was 5 lakh crore of the credit guarantee scheme of the MSMEs were also extended till March 23, which again, and with a special emphasis on hospitality, which has really suffered post the pandemic. So I think the markets took that with a lot of positivity, because that is again the need of the hour, to keep the credit system afloat, liquidity afloat, money in the hands of people who are consuming, MSMEs, all of that. All of these sectors go a very long way in terms of employment generation and all that. So markets, again, there was not a very high expectation. The budget was presented in a scenario of very heightened uncertainty, if I may say so, because there's so many things happening around the globe right now. Oil is at a $90 a barrel. I mean, the Federal Reserve today, I just saw breaking news. The Bank of England has increased its interest rate by 0.5%. There's global liquidity tightening which is happening, how it impacts your economy. So in amidst all of these factors, the budget was presented. So I think it what the markets really liked was that it was a forward-looking budget, but at the same time fiscally prudent. However, the borrowing number was big, and the bond markets reacted because of the large borrowing number. But if you ask me, I still think that kind of borrowing is required. It is a very key aspect of being able to spend in today's date, because let's understand, we are a huge economy which is just coming out of a pandemic. We're very grateful that we've not had massive fatality numbers to begin with. We are just stepping out of a third wave. So very grateful on that front. So I think, yes, coming out of the woods, and extremely high amount of spending is required, and the government is doing that. That's the message that was sent in the budget.
Government is introducing the concept of digital rupee. So can it be taken as a government's answer to cryptocurrency? And could you give some insights about it? Like what would be its
Yes, of
implication, and
course.
how would it affect the currency system in India?
Yes, I think it's a good move, definitely, for sure. There is no stopping CBDCs worldwide. If you are to see, this whole blockchain technology is there, and it's been proven to be a very solid technology system. 83 countries around the world. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in cryptos, but I think there are many number of countries who are now exploring their own version of the digital currency. In India also, this was a good announcement, a progressive announcement to make, because you can come up with a digital currency which is backed by the central bank, and it is also reflective, as in just like a fiat currency, that's the currency of your nation. It is also reflective of the growth. So it is backed by economic growth, and it has the sovereign behind it. So that is very clear. What it does help is, I was reading, in fact, some economies, it actually helped them to go completely cashless. So in India, for example, we have an example. We have managed to issue unique digital identities to over 1.3 billion people, right? Which has been a massive success, the Aadhaar. And you have managed to link your entire vaccination program also to Aadhaar, which is again a huge success. To be able to inoculate that level of population in absolute numbers is practically possible when you have this kind of a digital adoption. UPI, for example, it's a huge success story because it's I think it's the world's largest secure payment system. So when you have things like that, I think coming up with a digital currency at this point in time, which is backed by the blockchain technology, is a very progressive move, because what it does is it will also further the financial inclusion to the lowest common denominator. If you are to talk about the JAM, which is your Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobility, I think, which was, I think, the first step in the digital adoption as a country that we took. If you're able to link that to the digital currency in today's date, along with the UPI platform, the financial inclusion, the reach, the giving out of welfare benefits to the masses, to the interiors of India, I think that's going to be fantastic. And it's something that it will be interesting to watch out for.
Also, thank you for joining us today. Thank you all our viewers for tuning with us. Tune in for our next videos also on the budget series. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.